Hi everybody, my name's Jerry David DeCicca, and this is the infomercial for my new record, The Unlikely Optimist in His Domestic Adventures. The goal of this infomercial is to provide you some backstory on the record so that you can have informed choice on making the best decision for your music purchases on or after October 16th of this year. To tell you a little bit about my record, Eve and I moved to Bulverde, Texas a couple years ago, and we had already been living in Texas for a short period of time, in part because of how much I love Texas music. When we moved to Bulverde, there was only one thing that I knew about it. Well, two things. It was settled by an Italian, much like myself. Second thing was, it was the home of Auggie Myers, one of my favorite Texas musicians, who had played with Sir Douglas Quintet, made solo records on his own, and done session work from everybody from Tom Waits and Bob Dylan to John Hammond Jr. I kept thinking I'm going to run into Auggie one day at the grocery store, but after about a year or so of that not happening, I decided to take matters into my own hands and to make the modern decision of sending him an email. I went to his website and I saw his email address and I sent him a note and I said, "My name's Jerry David DeCicca, and I'm a fan of your music. I would love to have lunch with you, maybe some iced tea or a cup of coffee." After a few days, I got an email back, and all the email said was, "Call Auggie," and it provided his phone number. So I got my courage up, and a couple days after that, I rang up Auggie on the phone. Turns out he doesn't live in Bulverde anymore. He hasn't for a long time, and he lives in San Antonio. So we talked for about 45 minutes on the phone, and I told him about my music and how much I loved his, and then he said, "When are we recording?" I wasn't ready for that, but quick to my feet, I thought, this is a great opportunity. So he gave me the number of a studio in San Antonio, owned by Joe Trevino, Blue Cat Studios. Joe and I have since become best of friends, and we set a date. The next thing I had to figure out was what songs I was going to play with Auggie. I wrote a few new songs, I found some old ones, and I put something together that I thought was going to be a good batch of songs to be able to record with Auggie. But I didn't know what to expect, so I went down there with my guitar and with Eve, and I set up, and I thought that we were going to cut live, but instead of doing that, he wanted to be able to hear the songs first, so I played 9 songs in a row without taking a break. Eve sang with me on some of them, and then he set up his Vox Continental, and then he played along to those takes. He had me pick up my guitar and play along with him, but without a capo, because he wanted to watch my hands, because he said, that's the way I did it with Doug. So that was good enough for me. After that, in case you haven't seen Auggie, here's one record, one of my favorite Sir Douglas Quintet records. That's Auggie right there. And if that's not a good enough picture of Auggie for you, here's another one, a very good drawing. And if that doesn't make you love Auggie, here's a couple of his own records. Obviously, a very well-dressed man. That's not his cat, I asked him. Also animals that Auggie does not own. This is not Auggie's horse. So I had a great time recording with Auggie. Then we went and we got tacos afterwards. It was a super fun day. The songs I wrote at the time were very much kind of under the spell of this Greg Brown record at the time, which was really about kind of being able to kind of get joy from the small things in life that you find that are kind of natural to your environment, as well as the things that are inside you. And so this was kind of, songwriting-wise, kind of my biggest inspiration. I was very happy to be able to have Eve Searles sing with me, who has sang on several of my records, and this is her own record, Bird and Flower. She also sings on my Burning Daylight record. So the next thing we had to decide was, what are we going to do with these recordings that are just me, Auggie, and Eve? We did 9 songs that day. I went back in a couple weeks later and I did one like 12-minute song just by myself. I was going to do 10 songs that day, But one song that I wrote at a Whole Foods in Austin called Hot Older Lady was rejected by Auggie, Eve, and my friend Joe. Luckily, I have thick skin in a lot of songs, so it wasn't bothered by that. So after we had those tracks, I had to figure out, is this what the record's going to be? Just me and an organ and Eve and an acoustic guitar. And then my friend Keith Hanlon was getting married, and he asked me if I would come into Columbus, Ohio to perform his wedding ceremony, which I was more than happy to do. And as a thank you, he was the house engineer at Music Hole Recordings at the time, so he agreed to record drums and bass on the record for me. So we got my good friend Kanan Faulkner to be able to record bass, and also my good friend Jovan Karcic, who has 2 solo records of his own. He was actually the drummer on the first Black Swans record, my old band, and has played on a lot of other records over the years, and he's a great songwriter. And so Keith recorded Kanan and Jovan at Music Hole, great studio of them actually overdubbing to the recordings that we did. No click, but these guys have known my music for a long time, and they know kind of my natural rhythms, so it was very easy for them to kind of lock into that groove. And then when we got those tracks back, we went back to Blue Cat with Joe, and at the time we were recording this record, Burning Daylight. And so Don Cento, the guitar player on this, Kanan Faulkner is also the bass player on this, and Eve's on this. We kind of took a break from working on The Unlikely Optimist and went out and made that record, came back, and Don recorded guitar for The Unlikely Optimist. So this is a record that I've been kind of working on my own whenever I had a little bit of extra money and some time and could get my friends to play on it. And then we kind of had to figure out who else was going to play on this record. And Eve and I had gone to a bar in San Antonio called the Squeeze Box, and we saw this tenor sax player and singer, and it was just one of the best nights of rock and roll I've ever seen. A guy named Frank, the Wild Jalapeno Rodarte. We saw his band down at the Squeeze Box, and it was fantastic. Of course, Joe Trevino has known Frank forever, so we were able to get him on the record. Frank first recorded with Doug Somm with his band, the Del Kings, in 1959 or 1960 for the Harlem label. This is out on Norton Records, a great comp of early Doug Somm stuff. And then Frank went out to Las Vegas and spent the 1960s and then part of the 1970s out there as being the first band leader for a strip club in Vegas, and then came back here and recorded on one of my favorite Doug Somm records, Groover's Paradise. And if you've got this record, then you've seen Frank. This is an old picture. He's right here on the back. And I always thought, Frank Rodarte, alto, tenor, flute, vocals, congas, and Chicano trips of all kinds. So who wouldn't want that guy on your record? So he played tenor sax on the whole thing, and he appreciated not just the songs, but as meditations and explorations, and we just let Frank be himself, and it was really great. And then we went up to Austin, and Don Cento in his studio, we got Ralph White, who I loved. I saw Ralph play for the first time when I was 19 at Stashes in Columbus, Ohio with the Bad Livers, and I love Ralph's solo records. So Ralph played fiddle and kalimba on my record, and then we just kind of sat on it for a while. And then when I saved up some other money, I found out that one of my favorite mixing engineers, Chris Shaw, lived a couple towns over from here, and he agreed to mix it in a couple days for me. He did not mix Time Out of Mind, but Auggie did play on Time Out of Mind. And so when Auggie played on my record, it was more in this style than it was really the Sir Doug stuff. But Chris did record and mix Love and Theft, one of my favorite Bob Dylan records, and has also worked with Bob on his new record, Rough and Rowdy Ways. And Chris Shaw's done a lot of other great records over the years. But when I went up to Chris's place, he said to me, "Jerry, what do you want this record to sound like?" And I said, "Do you have a Bob Dylan plug-in?" And then I just looked at his shoulders for the next 3 days, and he did his thing. And we just talked, and he told me Bob Dylan stories for the next couple days. So it was great. My friend Jeb Lloyd Nichols did the artwork for this album. We had it mastered at Capitol Records for the digital, and Cauliflower Audio for the vinyl, which is going to come out someday. This is the first release I've ever done that there's not a physical release for, which is kind of a bummer for me, but it's 2020. So hopefully that answers all of your questions as to why there's not a vinyl release right now. But someday there's going to be. It comes out October 16th. I think it's a great record. It's really fun. It is a record about positivity and happiness, but not in the cheesy cornball way that most people write about it. Hopefully it addresses that in a way that feels complex, adult, and all the shades of human emotions that contribute to sincere joy. Thank you for joining me for my infomercial. Thank you to my videographer, Eve Searles, my puppy, my cat Squirrel. I hope you enjoyed this infomercial and it helps guide your future music buying decisions. You can purchase this on Bandcamp, or you can stream it, or you can do whatever you want to with it. It's going to be out there. Thank you so much. Bye. Still rolling.